So listen, guys, we only take sponsors for the podcast that we at Green and Sklar's actually use ourselves, all right? So the people that I talk about, the people that I allow to put their stuff on our site, this is the stuff that we use. So for instance, how is it that we get through to the IRS in under 3 minutes? I mean, we have too many cases. I cannot have my staff on hold for hours on end trying to get through. We use Call ENQ. They guarantee you will get in under 3 minutes. I can assure you, usually it is under a minute. You call up, you will get right through. And I'm not joking, when we sat after using it for about 2 months and figured out we were going to cut somewhere around $50,000 to $60,000 of billable time off simply by using Call ENQ. And remember, because we do so much of this as a flat fee, that is money and time that falls right to the bottom line. All right, we've arranged with Call ENQ a trial for all of you, 200 minutes for $19.97. Go check it out. I'm telling you, it will literally change the way you interact with the IRS, and you will actually boost your bottom line. How do we manage our resolution practice? Tax Help software. All right, Tax Help software. It does a lot of things. One is this is how we get our transcripts, right? So we get all of the transcripts, we get that beautiful report it puts together, wage and earning, we get it all in one fell swoop. This is how we do our 433s and our offers and compromise, right? All of our forms get filled out, it applies all the standards, does all the attached schedules, everything. But the biggest thing about Tax Help software you may not realize is that because of intelligent ordering that runs every night while we're at home doing whatever, in the morning, we are alerted to everything that changes on our clients' transcripts. For instance, this morning, I actually know one of my clients' offers have been accepted. I haven't even gotten the letter yet. The client hasn't gotten the letter yet, but it showed up on the transcript. A week ago, I told the client they're getting audited. Why? It was flagged in the transcript. All right. Tax Help software will become the cornerstone of your practice. Okay, we've arranged, again, a free 2-week trial for our members, all right, and a 10% discount. Go check out Tax Help software. I'm telling you, you're going to love it. Lastly, how is it that we manage 21 people? You know, Jeff and I started Green and Sklar's 5.5 years ago with a part-time admin. We're 21 people today. How do we keep track of the receipts and everything else? Because we're constantly on the road, constantly speaking. We have other partners who are constantly traveling. We use Receipt Bank. All right, take a photo. One, that expense gets booked automatically, saving our controller time. Two, the copy of that receipt is now permanently attached in our QuickBooks file. All right, we haven't just this is how you bulletproof your return and how your clients bulletproof the return. This way, if I lose the receipt, I eat it, I burn it, it doesn't matter. It fades, you know, that magnetic ink fades. You have that picture forever. And a picture in this case is worth 1,000 words or possibly a lot more money and heartache. All right, so go check out Receipt Bank, keep building your practices, all right, and enjoy the podcast.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us again for this week's podcast. I'm obviously Eric Green. I have a very special guest this week, and she's become a great friend of mine who I met actually on the lecture circuit, Amy Vetter. For those of you who do not know about Amy, you can just Google her and you'll learn everything you need to know. All right? She speaks, she writes books, she coaches people, she's a yogi, but it was actually after I listened to Amy, your TED Talk, that I Googled you, and you were going to be at the users conference, CCH users conference, when I was. And I was like, I have to meet you. And so Hector and I invited you to dinner, and we got to talking. And you know, there's so much to your story. I went out and bought the B3 method. I bought the book because I wanted to read it, and I read the book. And your story is really very cool, a little unbelievable. So again, for those of you listening who don't know who Amy is, growing up, Amy's family came upon, shall we say, hard times, financial times, And by age 16, she's working 3 jobs to cover daily expenses, realizing that this is no way to live, decides to go into a career that would be more stable, becomes a CPA. Anyway, sorry. But, and like many of us, dives headfirst into that career, right? First one in the morning, last one in at night. There's not a phone call that doesn't go unanswered, an email that doesn't go unanswered. And all of a sudden now you're relatively young, right? In your 30s, and this all starts to come to a head with illness and whatnot. And you make a radical change, which I'm jealous of, and I'm fascinated by, because I mean, it is a gutsy thing to do. It's a gutsy thing to do, and so I'm thrilled that you're on. I love the B3 method, and so truthfully, so first of all, Amy, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I just glossed over a whole ton of crap.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, can you fill in for the members who are listening, sort of what your a little more about your background that Eric just threw out in 3 bullet points?
Sure. First, we also have to call out Mariette Martinez for connecting us, because she, at that conference, she wouldn't stop on social media until we finally met and took a picture.
Right. I do remember that.
It just came back to me at the time. So I really appreciate that we met, because I've enjoyed our friendship as well. So, I mean, I can tell you right now, I'm a CPA. I'm a keynote speaker in the accounting profession, finance, banking, legal, professional services in general. I own a yoga studio, and I've been in the technology world for many years. And it's interesting when someone else talks about your background and says, oh, it's so risky and so gutsy, but when you're going through it, you're just going through your life, right? Like,
well, you're making decisions when you're there in the moment,
right?
Whereas the thought of, like Tax Rep Network, I enjoy the teaching of the members, and to hear them and their stories and all of that is great. And I love teaching at universities when I guest lecture and all around the country. What I have the guts to walk away from the practice. It's been a part of me for 25 years.
Right. Yeah.
And you've built something.
It's like you part of your body.
You make partner. I mean, you've built this practice, and it's amazing to me. And the reason it's gutsy is it's tough to take a really good hard look at something and make a decision to change your life as radical as you did, and which I've not really covered. So why don't you fill that in?
I'll go back a little, because and I don't, the way I kind of describe it is pivoting, because I don't, still looking at my own life the way I see it internally versus how it might externally look. I didn't do something so risky that I went away from accounting and became like a skydiver. So I definitely have stayed in the profession and pivoted along the way based on my experience level and the things that I took on over my career. And I think that's the biggest thing for anyone to look at, is that there's so many opportunities right within the profession. And it doesn't mean that you have to do the same job in accounting for your entire career, that there's all these different pivots you can make along the way, depending on, what interests you. And for me, going back to how I got into this. So my grandfather was a CPA. So I knew about the CPA profession. He was a CPA in the 1930s. So very beginnings of the profession, and an immigrant. And so I heard a lot of stories about being a CPA, and it was definitely put in a positive light growing up, because he helped take, coming from a poor immigrant family and then being able to create a better life for the generations after because of becoming a CPA. I mean, But at the same time, I was a musician. So I played violin and viola growing up. I was in an orchestra that was a tri-state orchestra. And so I spent hours and hours a day practicing. I mean, I actually, in my yearbook for the superlatives, won best musician. So that's how different my life is.
Well, yeah, but you know what though? You had discipline. You learned discipline early.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah,
you know,
I definitely, even for speaking, being a speaker, a lot of people will say, I don't know how you get on stage like that. That's really hard for me to do that. And I definitely take it back to the fact of playing violin, because you have to practice and practice and practice before you ever show up on stage or in a concert, because a violin does not sound good when you don't practice.
No, it does not.
There's no frets. So you're really you really have to keep practicing. And like most things, when you look at someone else's life or when you look at a symphony, what you see for the show is not the hours and hours of working on one measure in the music over and over again before you can get to the concert and everyone thinks, oh, this is amazing, but it was really boring getting there. We went through an extreme financial situation. My mom losing her businesses when I was 16. Parents got divorced. The credit cards were maxed out. So I started working 3 jobs when I was 16 years old. And during that time, started shifting my focus from music. Now, granted, in parallel, and like most decisions, you don't just make it out of nowhere. When my mom's business was thriving, I was working in her business, and she owned maid services in 3 different cities. And so she involved me a lot in the business, took me to networking events. So I started getting the pulse of an entrepreneur at a very young age, where I would start having ideas of what she could be doing. And it was just very exciting. So I originally had thought, well, I will go into college to be an accountant so that I could get the skills my mom didn't have. So my mom was an art teacher, having started a business. So she never had a business background. And, but then everything fell apart in the business, and accounting, knowing what I knew about my grandfather, was a much safer career than going into music. And luckily I had the opportunity to play on stage with the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra and have teachers from the orchestra. So like I saw what the real life profession of a musician would look like too, while I was comparing these things. So I feel very fortunate for having my eyes open at the time while I was making those decisions.
Right. And so you're now at the accounting firm, right?
Yeah.
You become an accounting major, you graduate, you pass the CPA exam, with no easy task. You're now
and
at
it took me a couple times. No one ever talks about that, but like it wasn't like, oh, slam dunk CPA exam. It was freaking hard. So.
CPA exam is hard. Listen, I passed the bar exam first shot. I then passed Connecticut first shot. And the reason is first of all, the bar exam is easier.
Right.
Number one. Number two, there's no way I'm going through this bullshit again. Doing it once and then we're done.
That's so funny.
Anyway, so you're now at the firm. You're working away like everyone did back then, right? Your staff, your senior, your manager. Walk us through what, before and during the, you're now going to become a partner, where you were at.
Yeah, and becoming a partner, actually, I always have big goals for myself, but I remember when I started at KPMG as an assistant in audit, and looking at the senior managers and the partners going, oh my God, I'll never know as much as them. There's no way. I could never do their job. It was so technical, and I knew so I did really well in the firm, but I did really well because I know how to run jobs. Like I know how to, so like running an audit job, I was really good at. Wasn't necessarily that I was the most technical person on staff. I could understand it good enough to make sure we got the job done with quality and so forth. So you start really noticing like what your strong points are and what your weaknesses are. So I remember I had such a complicated audit that no one wanted to be on. And so of course I'm on it. And, you know, a new FASB comes out and my manager, you know, drops it at my desk to read it, so that I'd be aware of it. And I mean, by that point I'd been there a couple of years and I pushed it back and I'm like, I will run this job like nobody else, but you are going to have to give me the cliff notes. I will never read that thing. So you have to know, like, where do you go for the people that have your strengths that, you know, I will fall asleep reading that. So in any case, I went through my career. I moved to South Florida. I ended up in internal audit, which I loved, because it was operational. You were looking at business processes. It got more exciting for me to be in audit. But what happened was I had my first child and he was a preemie and very sick. And so when that happened, I was 27, I think, years old. And I always knew I was going to be a business owner from growing up with a business owner family. But at that point, because he was sick and I wasn't going to be able to do the commute like I thought to Miami and all of these things. So I was like, well, I'm going to open my own bookkeeping business. And when I did that, I didn't actually know QuickBooks wasn't as big of a thing at the time. Like I remember seeing QuickBooks when I would go for these internal audits when they were using it on the side instead of SAP. Yep. And I was like, what are they doing? And so then I go into this business and say, I'm going to run bookkeepers. But then I saw another person's ad where they had this certified QuickBooks Pro Advisor logo. And I was like, oh, I'm like, that would look good. So I went and took the test, had no clue about QuickBooks. And what ended up happening was I started getting calls, but they didn't want the bookkeeping. They wanted someone to just help them understand their financials better, get it set up from a technology perspective. And I actually ended up loving the technology in a way that I wouldn't have imagined had I not gone into that business. And I grew it into controllership services, bookkeeping services, and so forth. And then I had my next scare, which was my second son, who was also a preemie, but I got sick from that one. And that was very scary as a business owner, thinking about, oh my gosh, like, what do you do when you're sick? And you know, I didn't have that much money saved to be out a year, you know? So I actually got approached by a CPA firm to merge my business in. And because of that scare, I was like, I mean, so it might look risky, but it was more like, I need security. You know, I was actually pretty afraid at that time. And I took on being a partner in that firm. And, you know, here it was a moment that I was like, wow, I'm, you know, in an accountant's head, you're like, wow, I made it. Like that was, you know, what you're like, you know, everybody looks at the partner like the most amazing person. And, you know, like I talk about in the TED Talk, what happened to me at that time was like, once I got to what I thought would be amazing, I was like, wow, I don't know if this is the right path for me.
Oh no, see, my career is reverse. So I was an internal auditor and I end up auditing the audit department. So the payroll.
Oh, that's funny.
And I saw what the director of internal audit at a very large insurance company made. And I was like, that's it. I think, you know, and you know, making like 95,000 or whatever. Now, again, this is 25, 30 years ago, but still, I then looked at the legal department and the tax lawyers are making $250,000. I was like, I'm like, the hell with this. So I ended up going to law school at night.
Wow.
I'm an auditor, so I'm internal audit from 7 to 4. I walk over to New England School of Law, have dinner at Fuddruckers or wherever they happen to be there, and I'm in class at 5:30 until 9 every night, 4 days a week. Friday night, Saturday, Sunday was just all studying. But so then I go into KPMG, into tax, and after about 2 years, began to realize when you look up the ladder and you don't want those jobs, like the partners were there 7 days a week.
Right.
And you know, what you begin to realize is you're under stress. They're pounding on you because they're under stress.
Right.
And they were like, at the time, KPMG had like 2,000 partners. It's not like you had any power of any sort.
Right.
I'm like, you know, same thing. This sucks. I don't want to do this either. And I went to a regional firm, and then eventually went on my own. I got in with some financial advisors. I was doing most of the estate planning, and they were like, I asked them one day, I'm like, how much do you have? And we laid out the next 6 months, and I said, that's enough. And I jumped, I quit. I started my own practice, merged in with a smaller boutique firm. Jeff and I left 5.5 years later, and now we're 21 people in our firm. But
that's amazing.
It's sort of, I didn't have the health scare, but I did have premature twins.
Yeah.
That is, I can tell anyone who's never been through this, everything bad happens at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
All right. They are in the NICU, and my wife, who is recovering from a C-section, is down on the couch. I'm upstairs with our oldest daughter, who's at home, who at the time is like 4, and the phone always rings at 3 a.m.
Yes.
This one's not doing well. You better come in. This one's not doing well. My daughter, we were told twice to come in, and she was not going to make it.
Oh,
of course,
wow.
my wife is now like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "They want us to come in. Me is struggling. They're doing fantastic now." Yeah, they really are. They're miracle kids. But that I know a little bit about that.
Yeah.
You know, the stress of that. So you merge in. You're now a partner, right? The top of the mountain, theoretically.
Yeah.
And what
Well,
was there one particular thing? Is what my question is? Is there one particular thing, or was it just you just had enough?
No, and it wasn't just about having enough, because, and I do want to make sure that's clear, because it was about really pausing and stepping back from the things that I do and say, what things do I enjoy the most? I don't want to give up all the expertise that I have in what I do. You know, you put thousands and thousands of hours in the work that you do and the expertise that you have. So it's more about figuring out how to pivot that expertise in different ways that might be great for you. And so, you know, I honestly had more of a breakdown at that time in my life, and I was going to therapy, and I was trying to really process things that happened when I was younger that I didn't allow myself to process up until that point. And, you know, your body at some point just comes apart and says, all right, it's time. And so, you know, I was going to therapy, and I also had started yoga at the same time. And I started yoga because of being sick, and I wasn't allowed to do my regular, more hardcore workout classes. And the doctor said, you can go to yoga. So I went to yoga, and it wasn't something that I was looking to do. And because it was my only option, I was paying attention more to it and really trying to understand it more. And I realized how much better I'd feel after I do yoga, and what that felt internally to feel more peaceful like that. And so it really started a learning journey for me, just about myself, really observing the things that I enjoy. And I have always been a speaker. I mean, so in some fashion, where I was either a teaching assistant in college, an adjunct professor, like somehow these things happen on the side that you don't really think about that are happening. You're just doing them as part of your life. And then all of a sudden, when you step back and observe all the things you're doing, you're like, I really love technology. I love helping clients. I love seeing the turnaround with clients. So I don't want to give that up. I love seeing the light bulbs go on when I'm speaking on stage. And so how do I take all of this and shift to the next thing? And it just so happened from the work that I was doing in the technology world and speaking for technology companies that I ended up getting hired into Intuit originally, then went to Intact and Xero, but and took on jobs that I understood the accounting market, I understood the customers, I understood technology, but I never really done those jobs before. So it was really about taking that leap of faith in the experience that you have and being open to learning a new role, a new job, and just being okay with being a beginner again. Because a lot of times it's hard to be a beginner because we like to be the expert. We like to know everything. And when you go into a new role you've never had before, even if you have a lot of experience, that's a hard thing. It's just to learn and to know I'm putting this time period in to learn and ask questions and not be the expert for a while.
It's there are a couple things there. What I have come to conclude, a number of things. One, I heard Tony Robbins say once that grinding is not enough. That you need to know what do you want, whether it's your religion, your body, your money, your profession, whatever it is, And what I have found is that's very true. Once I know what I want, to grind for grinding's sake does not do anything. I'm just going to work hard and hope things work out. Does not work. But if you know what you want, and then you can engineer backwards. How do I become? I'll give you an example. There is an attorney who, in the estate planning arena, who I remember 20 years ago, $10,000 to show up to speak, and made $1 million on his books. And I remember thinking, that's what I'd love. That is so cool. That's what I'd like to do. And somebody else mentioned to me who knows him, he didn't just wake up and that didn't happen. It took years of speaking and writing. Yeah. And so I started speaking and writing. And, because now I was just in a meeting this morning here in New York where you got books and you have the podcast and you have the coaching program. It all just didn't happen. It's been sort of a process of going there. Same with the law firm. I didn't plan on having a 21-person firm in 5 years. It sort of happened, but we set a goal, and as we kept going, you're always updating. But the bigger thing, I think, my thing, you make your own reality. People are like, well, you have to deal with reality. You make your own reality. You made your own reality. This is what I'm like to do. And like you said, it wasn't, I said a complete change. It was really a pivot. You're still in the accounting world. Right. I still see you at the conferences. But instead of sitting behind a desk grinding out financials, you're now explaining to people how to keep their life in order. No. And if you're listening to this, I actually sent Amy a text after Vegas. I had a moment where I was like, should I just go throw myself up the building? Because no, by the way, no one has to call 911. I wasn't actually going to go throw myself up the building. Yeah. But it's almost, I hate to say this, I don't want to get political. It was too much winning. Everything was going great. The books were going nuts. People wanted me to speak. The webinars, the practice is like out of control. I have a personal assistant now. So poor Nicole has to deal with all the phone calls and everything. But I had to just ratchet my life back. But so I changed the way I was doing it, not that. But so let's talk about the B3 method.
Yeah.
So the speaking and the technology. You know what? I think B3 method came before the TED Talk. Or do I have that order in?
It's the book. Yeah, I mean, so
they were very close in time.
They came out around the same time. Yeah.
So walk us through where the first of all, if you don't mind giving, and if you haven't read the book, go get the book. It's fantastic. It's very interesting, and it gave me real food for thought as far as what I'm doing in my own life. what is the B3 method, and where did it come from? How did you come to that?
So, through and one thing I always say is I'm not like the queen of work-life balance. There's never like a time you accomplish it, like you're 100% there, because something happens in your life and then that you can't control, and then you have to shift again. But I think the biggest thing, through my journey, like you said, is you can have a lot of success from the outside, but if you're not feeling good, if you're not showing up the way that you want to show up, then your quality of life isn't where you want it. So a lot of times we focus on business goals and forecasting for the business, but we don't necessarily get back to making sure we're aligned with our personal purpose and the quality of life that we want to put out there. And as I got deeper and deeper into yoga, I really realized how much I was not taking time for myself, letting myself just even be alone with my thoughts, which is really uncomfortable, but it's important to know, because these are the things that when we show up in interactions with other people, if we know we're having an issue at home or an issue at work, and then we go into a meeting with a client or a coworker, we need to understand what we're bringing into that experience. And a lot of times it's easier to just think, oh, that was a horrible meeting or a horrible person, instead of really looking at like, what are the things on the inside of us that are creating a certain amount of energy that we need to balance so that we don't put that out in the world the wrong way. And so the methodology I created just so that it was easy to remember when we get in this situation. So the formula is business plus balance equals bliss. So it follows our accountant lines that it balances. But the business side is really all of these different stressors that we have in our life, whether that can be technology disruption, that can be another person, that can be, like you said, our just being an entrepreneur and it getting out of control and not understanding how to get our life back in check. And so we have all these things, and a lot of times we feel like our life is happening to us rather than us controlling what's happening in our life better. And so that's the balance piece. And those are the human tools that we have internally to offset this. So mindfulness practices and how we're more collaborative with other people, and making sure that we're showing up in the ways that we want to show up during the day, but also remembering to keep expanding our creativity and our critical thinking and all of these things, where, going back to what I was saying before, when we become an expert, we get away from that creative side of us, because that's when it gets uncomfortable when we're learning something new. So how do we take balance activities outside of work or pushing ourselves inside of work to try new things so that we offset the stressors in our life? And that's what equals bliss. So what bliss is in that formula is the maintenance of happiness. And a lot of times we think of happiness that it should just happen to us. Like, we're at lunch and we're laughing with a friend, or we're at a networking event and it's fun. But actually, happiness is something we have to practice. We have to ensure that we are doing the things that we need to do, the self-care, whatever that is, so that we are feeling a sense of happiness even when it doesn't come naturally to us. Because our human brains will go to the negative. We'll look at the negative sides of our jobs, our families, the friends around us, rather than seeking out the positive or being grateful for the things that we do have. And so in order for us, even in a bad business situation or a coworker that you don't enjoy working with, how do you show up in a different way and have compassion for somebody, or sit there and observe their actions rather than respond right away, in order for you to feel better about how you showed up at that meeting, and when you leave, feeling a sense of gratitude that that went better than you thought. And we do have control to do that, but it's a practice, and we do have to work on it.
one of the things that I agree 100%. One of the things that I struggled with was I was very, and always have been very result oriented. Guys tend to be more than
Yeah.
women, but you have both and both.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, I'll be happy when.
Yeah.
I'll be happy when I generate $1 million of revenue. I'll be happy when we're at 30-person firm. I'll be happy when, this is a commercial success. And because we're forever moving the bar, you're never happy.
Right.
And one of the things that I took away was it's okay to celebrate the small victories along the way and let yourself be happy. And I think, there's
and not feel like you have to jump off the bridge.
Well, it was, well, you know what, here's the thing. My practice began controlling me.
Yes.
And what I ended up doing is, and what I think, if you're listening, what you take away from this is you need to take control of your practice. It's not a living thing. It doesn't have feelings. It's not losing sleep about you. Don't lose sleep about it. To the point where I am fairly quick to fire clients if this is not a good match, or you're not going to listen to me. Truthfully, you'd be better off somewhere else. There are times when clients are not going to talk to me that day. They will get a return call from somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
When I leave at 5 or 5, I tend to go home every day for dinner with my kids. After then was when I would work until midnight. I've kind of stopped that, partially because at age 49, my brain no longer works the way that it used to. By 10 o'clock at night now, I can't do it. I'm done. But I now have a personal and a business cell phone. My business cell phone gets turned off. I understand you're calling or texting. It'll wait till tomorrow morning. There's nothing I'm going to do about it that night anyway. So rather than having it create agita, so really it's taking control of your practice, whatever that is, and enjoy the small victories along the way. Because if you're going to wait till someday when you're happy, you'll never be happy, or it'll be too late to really enjoy it. Or at least that's my fear. My fear is when I'm 70, the kids are grown up and gone, and I don't know them, or we don't have the relationship that we should have, or I'm sick, or my wife is sick, or both. I just, it is focus on yourself now. As far as you can't go the other extreme either, and not care about your business, but you really do have to have balance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tough thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, it can easily get out of hand. I'm a business owner, 2 businesses, and that's one thing. I think the biggest thing through my journey is having that awareness of when I'm starting to feel overcooked, and knowing I need to back it down, and come back to my staff and say, what are we going to stop doing? So, I am an idea person, so I get excited about things like, we should try this, we should try that. We put it in our strategy, but then we're still working on like 5 other things. And so then what we have to start doing is then saying, well, what things are we going to stop doing if we think this thing is the important thing to go after? And it's really important that that you take those moments to step back from the business, because like I sold my business when I was I don't know, I must have been 34, 35, and it was like losing my right arm at the time. Like I remember I was depressed for like 2 weeks after. Like, who am I? Because like it's that business starts defining you. You put your heart and soul into it, and you lovingly let it go to somebody else. But then the next morning you wake up and it's like, wow, that's not my business anymore. And you have to understand that this is your next stage. And when you get there, you realize like you said, like that business is a separate entity. It can live with somebody else.
Yep.
And be whatever it's supposed to be. You kind of created it for the world. But then what do we do to make sure that we don't start getting off balance with the next thing that we do? Even if we get excited, it's our person, what I do now is total passion driven, love the things that I do. But I do have to hone in because I don't want to overwork. I don't feel good when I'm overworked. And then I start losing my energy of things that I really enjoy doing. So I want to make sure I'm still enjoy doing it. And that is making sure that you're controlling the stuff that's going on in your life the best that you can and delegating it to people as well and not trying to do everything. Because if you do everything, you're working 24 hours a day.
Right. So let's switch gears. How does the TED Talk happen?
I applied. Well, they actually were doing auditions, which I think is a little unique. So I actually won the audition night. And so you had to do the talk in 2.5 minutes. Couldn't go longer than 2.5 minutes. So that was a huge challenge to get your point across in 2.5 minutes. And I thought from that audition, they would be selecting the people for the actual TED event, but they only selected 2 people from that audition to actually go to the TEDx event in the summer. And it was, so I would say it was such a great experience because again, it pushed me to learn a new style of speaking that I'm not a scripted speaker at all. So I'm not comfortable memorizing. I'm not a good memorizer. I hated memorizing when I played music. That's why violin was good for me because there was sheet music and I could sit and play it. So I had to figure out within a script how to make it feel like it's not a script. And so memorize it in a way that people felt it was authentic. And it was a huge challenge. I probably put more hours into a 10-minute talk than, an hour keynote of just really rehearsing it so that I could get it down, get it to the point, and it still be meaningful.
No, it really, well, because you've got 15 minutes. That is it.
Well, they didn't even so for ours, they thought 15 minutes was too long. So I think I had 7.5.
Really?
Yeah.
I know comedians and when they do a show or they're going to give a talk I don't know him, but I think it was Lewis Black when he did the correspondence dinner. He was interviewed and he said, you start 6 months out practicing.
Oh yeah.
Because you've got 20 minutes. That's it. And you've got to deliver and it's got to be smooth and all of that. And it's not like you can get up there and just wing it.
No.
That's not going to go well.
Yeah.
So what did the TED Talk do for you? I mean, was there anything surprising? I mean, clearly book sales go up and people may want to book you more. Was there something surprising that came out of it?
I think it was just, it was cool. So weirdly enough, it wasn't the event. I practiced with my youngest son. So at the time he was, let's see. So I think that was 2 years ago. So 7th grade. So it was interesting because he's never been a CPA, because I start off talking about that. And it was so awesome practicing with him because he would be like, what's a partner? And I'm like, oh yeah, if you're sitting in the audience or you're not an accountant, you wouldn't know what a partner is, So he was coming up with things so that I better understood how to explain something, just talking to a child, which was awesome. And then one of the funniest things, because he's like, I came home from a trip and I had 2 weeks to go still, and I was practicing all the time and staying in the car or whatever. And he came home and he goes, I know how to help you. I've been watching America's Got Talent. So and one of the things that he made this little tweak, but it was a part where I was talking about, when I became partner this time, I thought I'd be so happy. And he goes, you should say like overjoyed, like that, show like a word with like more emotion. And I was like, this is so cool that I have been able to amp up this talk by being coached by my 7th grade son.
Yeah.
And it was these little tweaks he made that made such a big difference. And I even felt better when I was doing it, that he just kept letting me practice with him over and over again, because he was having so much fun being a part of it. And I think that was a lesson that and I've always involved my kids in the things that I do, but it's important for, like, not everything you do in your career has to be this individual thing. We actually that night did 2 shows. So that show ran twice. And he sat through both. He was critiquing other speakers, what was good, what was like, he was even like, getting all into the process, but it opened his mind about something that he could have never done. He wouldn't have ever understood. And then even cooler is my other son just went to college this year, but he's going for environmental engineering. And last year, his high school actually has a TEDx event. And so they reached out to me, seeing that I was part of TEDx Cincinnati as the MC. And when I got involved, I was like, oh my God, Jagger needs to do this. Like, this is such a great experience to have. And then because of my experience and all the things that I figured out about how to put a TEDx talk and what the components are to make it work, I was able to coach him to do his. His is coming out any day now, but it's about the things you can do in your life where you can make an impact on the environment, because everybody says, oh, it's too big. And his talk is like, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And it was such an awesome experience again to go through it with him and coach him and get that tight, and then watch him thrive and be up there as a speaker. And it felt just as exciting. So it's just been one of those things that keeps rolling on in different ways.
All right. No, it isn't. And it is going to, I think the experience will be life-changing. If for nothing else, to have to pull your thoughts together and go through, like you did, the prep. Yeah. Talk about great experience. I wish someone had done that to me before I went to college.
Yeah, exactly.
I used to be terrified of giving a talk in front of an audience in college. He does that, it'll be.
I know. Problem. Well, then when he's going to apply for jobs, he can send his TEDx talk. I'm just so excited. Right.
So listen, I know that, you've helped me. For folks who are listening to this, are like, oh wow, I need this kind of thought. I need this sort of help. Any recommendations?
Sure. So I do a number of things in my business to help people with this. So one is that we have something called the B3 Method Institute. And so that is an online learning platform that sends you like little learning segments once a week. So it's like 10-minute commitment a week, but it's all on these topics. And what it does is make you internalize, journal a little bit about how you're experiencing that in your life, and set an intention for the week of trying something that would shift that. And so that's something that's available. If you go to my website, you'll see that. I also have my own podcast called Breaking Beliefs, which I interview leaders from all over about belief systems that they've had to break or understand why they have the beliefs that they do in order to be successful in the things that they do. And then I also do coaching. So for people that want the coaching, that's always an option. But, my passion is keynote speaking. And, getting these books out there is a way to help people take these tips and internalize it in their life. But I love the joy of actually meeting people in person and seeing what is meaningful to them and how it shapes their life. So it's been very cool, and it's been awesome for you to share some of the things that have helped you along the way too, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, thank you. And so before I ask my last question, how do folks get in touch with you?
So you can go to amyvetter.com. So it's VETTER, or any social channel. I'm at Amy Vetter CPA, and you can follow me there.
All right, now, and I'll put links to both of those in the description of this episode. All right, so final question. For the accountants who are listening to this, all right, who may feel sick and overwhelmed and all the things that you and I had sort of described, what's sort of the one piece of advice you would give?
That if you notice that you're not feeling right, that's the time to pause and not get, not to escape, to actually take moments to pause and really observe how you're feeling and try to decipher it. And people do it in different ways. They can do it through journaling. They can do it through outside activities. They can do it through talking to a professional therapist, or executive coach. Whatever ways that you do, give yourself that time to explore yourself rather than run away from yourself. And those are the moments where you find out these little nuggets. You think you know everything about yourself till someone independent goes, oh, but you said that here and that there, and then they connect dots that you just can't connect because it's your life. So to take that time for yourself so that you can really create the life that you desire.
All right, no, it's great advice. So listen, Amy, thank you for doing this. I appreciate your coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And I know I'll see you in Vegas for AICPA. Quickly, any other conferences that you've already booked that you know you're doing?
What am I doing so far? So in the coming months, I'm doing a women's conference in North Carolina, CPA Society. I've got a private event. There's another conference in December. That's a new conference that is being created in Dallas for accountants that want to become advisors. And I'll be at AICPA Engage. I'm right now finalizing events for 2020.
Yep. All right. Well, listen, thank you for doing this. And for those of you listening, go check out the links. You can go check out Amy's stuff. Go get the B3 method. It is a worthy read. And Amy, listen, thank you. And I'll be in touch.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.